Here we are, February 1st. It's a D-Day for Canada, which is already teetering on the brink. Donald Trump, a man who actually puts his country first. This is a concept so foreign to Justin Trudeau, it might as well be written in Latin. Anyway, Trump has made it official. As of tomorrow, a 25% tariff on Canadian goods will be implemented, although there are some rumblings yet confirmed that this deadline may be pushed to March 1st. But there is this massive economic torpedo that has been fired straight at the hull of a country that could have and should have avoided this entire mess. But we didn't. Because we have leadership that, rather than acting like an ally to the United States, has spent the last decade acting like an annoying, virtue-signaling, self-righteous scold. Let's not kid ourselves. This isn't about Donald Trump being an economic bully. This isn't some rogue, unpredictable move from a man who's prone to making big, bold, and effective decisions. This is a reaction. This is a response to the utter failure of the Trudeau Liberals and their enablers in the so-called conservative movement, like Ontario's disappointing Doug Ford, to deal with the flow of illegal immigrants and drugs across our border. This is what happens when you have a government more concerned with scoring points at Davos than actually securing the best interests of Canadians. And guess what? It's the everyday Canadians, working class Canadians, people in manufacturing, agriculture, energy, who will pay the price. And who's going to save them? Melanie Jolie? Please. This is a woman so far out of her depth, she might as well be holding diplomatic meetings in a kiddie pool. Doug Ford, who ran as a conservative and now governs like a liberal with a beer gut. Give me a break. The only leader in this country showing a shred of common sense, a fraction of economic foresight, is Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And what has she been saying all along? We need to actually deal with the border issue. We need a Canadian border czar who will coordinate with Trump's people, take action, and give the U.S. a reason to hold off on these tariffs. She's been warning Trudeau, telling him that if he keeps antagonizing Washington, there will be consequences. And now, here we are. Let's rewind. Remember how Trudeau just a few short weeks ago was busy wagging his finger at America, scolding them for re-electing Trump? Remember when he couldn't resist taking cheap shots at the U.S., calling them racist, saying democracy was in danger because they didn't elect Kamala Harris? Instead of diplomacy, we got petty grandstanding. Instead of strengthening our ties with our most important trade partner, Trudeau was poking the bear. Well, the bear is awake, and guess what? It has teeth. Trump isn't playing around. The border is a disaster, and unlike Trudeau, he's actually willing to take action. The flow of illegal immigrants and fentanyl into the U.S. from Canada has skyrocketed. Organized crime groups are using Canada as a launching pad for pushing drugs into the States, and we're just letting it happen. If Trudeau actually cared about preventing these tariffs, he would have cracked down on the problem months ago. Instead, he handed Dominic LeBlanc a meaningless $1.3 billion package that won't even be fully implemented until 2026. Brilliant. And then he prorogues Parliament so that the measure can't even be passed. Meanwhile, the RCMP is literally telling us that organized crime has infiltrated the country. That the Swanton sector, where Ontario and Quebec meet New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire, has seen a 600 to 800% increase in illegal border crossings. And what has Trudeau's big move been? Strengthening visa requirements for Mexicans. That's it. That was his big diplomatic maneuver to stop the crisis. Now he's standing around confused as Trump does what Trump said he would do all along. Impose tariffs until Canada takes the problem seriously. So let's take Doug Ford here. Here's a guy who had a golden opportunity to stand up and lead. He could have coordinated with Alberta. He could have put pressure on Trudeau. He could have called out the insanity of Canada's immigration and border policies. But instead, silence, inaction, or at best a few half-hearted calls for diplomacy. Doug Ford ran on being a tough guy, a businessman, someone who understands economics. But when the moment came for him to actually fight for Ontario's economy, to protect manufacturing, to push back against Trudeau's foolishness, he did what all these so-called conservatives do. He folded. He got weak. He went along to get along. And that's why today we're facing devastating economic consequences. These tariffs aren't just going to hurt Alberta's energy industry. They're going to cripple Ontario's manufacturing sector. They're going to make life more expensive for every single Canadian. And the people who could have stopped this, Trudeau, Ford, the spineless bureaucrats in Ottawa, they sat on their hands and they let it happen. While Ford and Trudeau make footsie with globalists and bureaucrats, Danielle Smith in Alberta is actually talking to Trump's people. She's been pushing for months to get a border czar in place. She's been calling for real action to secure the border, to deal with the organized crime problem, to actually give the U.S. a reason to trust Canada again. And for this, she gets scolded by Trudeau. When Trudeau was busy whining about right-wing populism in the U.S., Smith was having real conversations with business leaders, economic advisors, American officials. She knows what's at stake. She understands that this isn't just some abstract diplomatic dispute. It's a direct threat to Canadian jobs, to Canadian families, to Canadian prosperity. Smith isn't interested in Trudeau's pathetic posturing. She isn't looking to score cheap points with the globalist crowd. She's doing what a real leader does, defending her province, advocating for practical solutions, refusing to let her people get steamrolled by a federal government that doesn't have a clue. This is what happens when you elect ideological radicals instead of real leaders. This is what happens when you prioritize political theater over economic reality. Trudeau could have prevented these tariffs. He could have strengthened our border. He could have taken Trump's concerns seriously. Instead, he chose to virtue signal. He chose to insult the very man who controls the fate of our trade relationship. And now we're all going to pay the price. The solution is we need to throw these clowns out of office, obviously. Trudeau, Ford, the entire incompetent lot of them. We need leaders who understand how the world actually works. Leaders who recognize our relationship with the U.S. is vital to our survival. Leaders who don't just blindly follow woke ideology at the expense of the people they're supposed to serve. Danielle Smith understands this. The question is, how much more pain will Canadians endure before the rest of our so-called leaders do? Hey, this is Richard Syrett. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.